What's up, everybody? Paul here from the Hoops Crew with my first episode back in a while. Thank you all for tolerating Ben in my absence last week for both the Paul James Show and, of course, Post Game Live. It's good to be back. Thank you all for your patience while I was gone, supporting my wife with her various health issues. But it's been a long time coming, so I'm stoked to be back at it. Looking forward to getting into the show with you tonight and talking all about the upcoming game against the Gold Coast Suns. A bit of redemption, hopefully, off the back of some opening round trauma. Shout out to those already in the chat. Ben, who covered for the show this week and is rightfully going back into the background. Shadu, Sam, Foxy. Thank you to all of you who are already there and getting busy in the chat, as well as to those who are watching silently in the background right now. Again, thank you to everyone who's stuck around and waited for me to come back. It's good to be back at it. Tonight, we've got a few things to cover. It's not going to be the longest show in the world. There's not a huge amount for us to focus on here. But we're, of course, going to look at the team lineups for this matchup between the Cats and the Suns, the whiteout game. We're going to talk about the last time we played. So, unfortunately, a little bit of trauma corner territory. We'll go back to that round 0 matchup from earlier this year. We'll talk about a larger historical analysis between the two clubs. We'll look at our next 5 weeks. We'll go around the grounds. Of course, there's a game being played between the Dogs and the Crows right now, or allegedly. It seems like only one team has showed up. We'll get into some news. We don't have any trivia lined up this week, I believe. Let me double check that. We have no trivia lined up this week. We've got our game of the week. Honestly, I could go through a whole bunch of games this week. Should do the blue shirt this week. Impeccable taste, but no brown jumper. Sorry, I'll make sure that I bring the brown jumper back sometime soon. We'll get into the game of the show, the game of the week, as well as your questions and your comments before we wrap things up. Sack that Ben bloke. He couldn't even get his stats right. He's still got, and I'm looking at our doc right now, he's talking about the Cats' biggest win against the Gold Coast Suns being 123 points back in 1992. I'll leave the pregnant pause because I think we all see the flaw in that. Gary Ablett Sr. kicked 6 in that game against the Gold Coast Suns, allegedly. There he is. I can see him scrambling on the back end now. He's editing it. I'm probably going to get some sort of text in there that calls me out in a moment. I should get some live footage of Ben scrambling in the chat. In fact, let's really spook him here. Let's have a look as Ben with a cheeky fuck you in. There he is. Ben's working on the background on the fixing the show right now. So it's his stupid fault. He's fixing his mess. You love to see it. All right, let's get into the show by talking about the team lineups and what we know about this game against the Suns going into this week. We'll begin by talking all about those changes. So let's take a look at what's going on for both teams. Some significant ins and outs for both teams. For the Cats, Graham Myers being managed, so they're just continuing to look after his knee. And Tom Stewart out injured. Tom Stewart with the very mysterious injury there. It seems to be a concussion, but it was very innocuous. No one seemed to notice it. No one made a fuss until all of a sudden he was out. But ins, pretty important ins as well. Mitch Edwards and Lawson Humphreys returned to the team. And then for the Suns, significant ins and outs. Jared Witts, Will Graham, Will Powell, and Lockie Weller all out. And the ins, Charlie Ballard, Zeke Hewland, Ben Jepson, and Sam Closey. The emergencies, because I can see Brendan there in the chat. We've got to make sure we acknowledge the emergencies. Georgie Boy Stevens is on the emergency list. Take him one step further. Put him in the seniors. He deserves it. He is an absolute rock star. He deserves to be there, but we're inching a bit closer. George Stevens is in. James Warple is an emergency. And Grind, despite being out, I think if we need to pull the lever, he's clearly there and they're ready to pull the lever and bring him back in. So Brian Myers there on the emergencies list. Holman, Witts, and Bo Addisell for the Suns in that respect. So then when we look at the lineups, obviously, what threats are we contending with here? What do we have to worry most about when it comes to the Gold Coast Suns? And I think the answer is pretty obvious. It's that midfield and the cavalcade of blokes that can roll through that midfield, from Christian Petrarca who's obviously, cut us up as a mid-sized forward in the last game we played as well. But Christian Petrarca, we're of course talking Noah Anderson, Matt Rowell, Took Miller when he rolls through. There's a long list of players who can go through that part of the ground and absolutely chop us to bits. And we saw it happen in that round 0 game. Now, I'm sure the boys will be pretty keen to atone and make good on what occurred last time. But they're still pretty dangerous threats, even if we're switched on at our absolute best. So it'd be interesting to see how that one goes. Meanwhile, of course, and I spoke about Christian Petrarca and what he did as a mid-sized forward last time, Bailey Humphrey in the same capacity really got a hold of us. It's the big weakness of the Cats. We don't necessarily get ourselves killed by a key forward. It happens from time to time. Every now and then one gets off the chain. But what really gets us are mid and small forwards. And so when I look at this Gold Coast team, I worry about Christian Petrarca. I worry about Bailey Humphrey. I worry about Leo Lombard, who's going to be up there. They've got plenty of, small, fast, athletic, dangerous small forwards that could really get a hold of us. Ben Long's up there as well, who plays both tall and small a little bit. Miller, obviously, you can see him lining up there in the forward line at the moment, can kind of play that capacity as well. Walter and Ben King are kind of their talls, but there's threats all across that forward line. It's a really difficult part of the ground for us to have to contend with. Atush's just dropped in and said, the Cats may never win again. There might be something to that. We'll just have to wait and see. But where I think the Cats can get them, and there's so much talk about, and I spoke a bit about it in a dedicated video earlier in the week, about Jeremy Cameron and his arm and the difficulties he's facing. I think where we can still get them is with our forward line. They're not without very talented players, from Dan Rioli to Mac Andrew to Sam Collins. Like, they've got fantastic options there, and that's not even paying proper credit to the likes of John Noble and Bodie Uland, who are coming along nicely. But I do think we can stretch them in that particular part of the ground. But we need our midfielders in particular. It starts and finishes with our midfield. We've got to get that delivery inside 50 better. Our tall forwards, Shannon Neal's not in the greatest form right now, but he's not getting great service from his midfield as well. Jeremy Cameron is battling with his arm and injury. He's not getting top flight, top shelf service from the midfield as well. We really need to step up that delivery inside 50. They are doing some great things around the ground. They are winning the ball at the contest. They're winning clearances. They're doing great things in that respect, but the delivery inside 50 has dropped off a bit in the last few games. And unsurprisingly, it syncs us up with our current losing streak. When we were up and running before, the forward handball was going well, but then obviously at some point leading to those set shots, there's going to have to be a kick, and we were lacing out those targets nicely. We were lowering the eyes. In the last couple of weeks, we've gone back to kind of bombing it inside 50 a little bit more, and it just doesn't work. We need to do better in that respect. So I think we can take it. I think both teams, their greatest weapons here could be their forward lines, and it's just about how we use it. Of course, there's going to be the intrigue. We can see that Jack Henry's currently listed as full back. Every likelihood that he goes forward again. Be interesting to see how that one plays out as well. So, talking about a result and what we expect to happen here. I don't say it with the greatest level of confidence, but I do have the Cats winning this one. I think it'll be a sub 10 point game either way, but I think the Cats will get the job done at home. I think the home factor helps. Obviously, we can't afford to have another loss with another wideout thing, or we'll never have another wideout ever again. We'll be 0-2 if we get rolled this time around. Let's square that ledger and start to tip it back in the positive direction for us. I think the Cats will get the job done in a sub 10 point margin game, but not because we do a bad job, just because it's a bit of an arm wrestle. I think the Suns will put their best foot forward. They'll apply themselves a lot better than they did last week against Brisbane, but probably not to the same absolutely humming along level that they were at back in round 0. It'll be an interesting one to watch, but I've got the Cats here. Sub 10 points. Let's slap 8 points on it. Cats by 8 points as the margin for that one. Let's move on to some other notes around this game. Of course, there's the injury list. Let's bring that one up. The Health Hub has been updated, and we can get a bit of a look at what's going on in that particular respect. So Tom Stewart obviously having gone in for concussion, and Graham Myers with a bit of management around his knee that we've been talking about earlier. But beyond that, we've got Mitch Nevitt with a hip, and that's a test. Brad Close with his ankles, a test. Cotton Matterfo Forbes is now just 1 week away. Nick Driscoll in concussion protocols as well. Toby Bloody Conway is just Toby Bloody Conway. Jacob Mollier, TBC as well with a quad strain. Tyson Stengel in his individualized program. Didn't really get to talk about it last week, but of course there's some photos emerging of him returning to the Cats training, and naturally the questions have started popping up. When's Tyson going to be back? When can we expect him to get back out there for the seniors? It may have just been an unflattering photo, but if it wasn't, he needs a bit of conditioning work before he steps foot on an AFL level field. I can see him back in the VFL fairly soon, just working his way into it and developing that touch again. But if that photo is not misleading, he might have been touching a few cheeseburgers, and he needs to put in the time and effort just to get his body back into AFL level shape. By no means is he fat. I'll be carrying more than that bloke, but he's not at that primed and ready AFL level kind of shape that he needs to be in based on that one photo alone. And I'm sure he'll get himself to where he needs to be and be putting his hand up for the seniors nice and soon. And it'll be fantastic to have him back. Just to quickly acknowledge some comments going on in the chat here. Atush, so we were saying we got tipped us by 32 points. Elite teams don't stay down for too long. Just look at Carlton as an example. Good point. Elite teams don't stay up for too long. And I'm sure you guys will come back to the ground nice and soon. Shadu says the usual ruck is out, isn't he? So obviously that's old mate Jared Witts. But Ned Moyle does a pretty handy job there in the ruck. They've been kind of going with a two-prong ruck attack. Now they're just going one-on-one. I think that works favourably for Mitch Edwards. But we'll see. Ned Moyle is no pushover by any stretch. Jake has popped in there talking about James Kelly and Essendon needing to hire him. Of course, lots of conversation about James Kelly this week. And he's understandably and deservedly, and good on him, put up his hand in spite of all the James Hird talk. He's putting up his hand as a potential candidate. He's not scared, and I like that. And Essendon will think pretty positively of him. He came over to the Bombers off the back of departing the Cats and did some pretty good things for him at the tail end of his career. But Shadu says he has to want to go. Yeah, look, I think he does. He's made that clear. I don't think you look a gift horse in the mouth. If there's an opportunity to be a head coach, you take it. And then make it your own. And I'm sure he'll do a fantastic job if he ends up at the Bombers once again. Jakey says the herd's the fly in the ointment. Yeah, agreed. Simon's popped in saying that always thought Pops was the logical successor to Scotty. Absolutely, he's been shaping up that way. But this could be that spanner in the mix. Jake says Kyton Matafai Forbes needs to get in and play some VFL to earn another extension. Yeah, the game time's going to make a huge difference there with him. So hopefully he gets that opportunity, and then if he remains on the list, well, he went and earned it. But it'd be a shame if he finds himself delisted simply because he just couldn't get his body right. Those are the worst sort of stories. From there, Shadu says, I saw him, Sheedy, and a few others met with Essendon before AFL execs meeting. Yeah, there was a meeting earlier today. A few photos snapped there. Where are we? Ben says, talk about the NBA. We'll get back to the NBA. Super chats for NBA talk. And I'm so keen to talk about the Knicks and the Spurs. That was absolutely wild this afternoon. But yeah, New York's going to shit right now. Someone threw an egg and hit Wemby in the head as they were heading to their rooms, which is just fucking bullshit. Jake says there was a quote from James Kelly's retirement where he talked about Essendon bringing his love of the game back. That's awesome. Let me have a look here. Any other comments? I didn't notice, Tush, the earlier comment, the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour. Thanks, mate. All right, let's continue on here around this particular game. Just some players that Ben Reeve has put on notice. Mark Blitzarves. His form hasn't been great, so he's on Ben's watch list. Ollie Wiltshire, which I think is harsh. I think he's coming in with his level of experience and doing a pretty admirable job for where he's at developmentally in his career and in his journey into the AFL. But he's on notice, and I guess he's on notice because I would presume, Ben, because you've got the likes of Brad Close that are there, you've got the likes of Gryan that are out this week, you've got the likes of Tyson Stengel that are on their way back, and so the clock might be ticking, but I've been really happy with what he's contributed so far. And lastly, he's got Jeremy Cameron, which is harsh. Jeremy Cameron, copped a blow to the arm, and that just derailed his entire day. Otherwise, his football's been pretty good. All right, before we move on to the last time we met, just some Patreon shout-outs here and YouTube member shout-outs. Thank you to the 32 Patreon members that we've got. That's patreon.com/thehoopscrew. If you want to join that family, there's early access, extended and exclusive content. Go check it out. Thank you to the 32 members of our Patreon community. It's huge, your support. We really appreciate it. And if there's anyone else that wants to jump on board, again, patreon.com/thehoopscrew for lots of awesome content from myself, Ben, and the chaps. Thank you to Samson, a YouTube member that's joined in the last month. Thank you for your support there as well. Lots of early access for you too. And to our over 2,500, our 2,517 subscribers. Last time I was here 2 weeks ago, we were just on Post Game Live. We were scrambling to get the 2,500. We've added a bit more than a dozen since then. So thank you to all of those people who might be watching tonight, might be watching after the fact. Thank you all for climbing aboard. It's a pleasure to have you. All right, let's move on to the last time we met, where it's somber reading. The Cats were down by as much as 85 points at one stage. We went down to the Suns back in round 0 to the tune of 56 points, 19-11, 125 to 10-9, 69. The Gold Coast Suns rocked up ready to play. They were ready to light it up. The Cats were pretty well asleep at the wheel, and we kicked a few goals late to make it look a little bit more respectable. You can see that little string of goals in the beginning of the final quarter. Ollie Dempsey, Shannon Neal, Ollie Dempsey, Ollie finishing with 4 in the game. All junk time stuff, despite it being quite early at that point. We kicked 5 consecutive goals, but the game was already done. There was no way we were coming back from it. And the Cats went down by, as we said, 56 points. No players featured in the coaches' votes, unsurprisingly. But the Cats were missing Paddy Dangerfield, Jeremy Cameron. We now got both of those two blokes back. Christian Petrarca, as I mentioned before, put on an absolute masterclass. He did some phenomenal stuff, as did, as I mentioned before, Bailey Humphrey, and some others just put in some fantastic efforts. We're going to have to put in a lot of time into those blokes to try and square the ledger this week. But the sooner we can move on from that game, the better. So let's talk about the history between these two teams, which of course is not overly long. They haven't been in the competition for too long, those Gold Coast Suns, entering in 2011. And of course, being the new kids on the block, being debuting a lot of young kids. Even the influence of Gary Ablett didn't help the club too much early on. They pinched a few wins here and there against some of the lower rung teams. But Geelong, peak of their powers, basically have been the entire time that the Gold Coast Suns have been a club in the AFL. We began with a 73-point win. We've won by 118, 124. There's been some big victories over the journey. The current ledger, as you can see here, we've played 18 games. We've won 13 and lost 5. That first loss coming back in 2014, if we want to touch on our first kind of trauma corner game. Back in 2014, where they got us by 40 points at Carrara. That's their first ever win. They belted us by 64 points. You might remember this game back in 2024. They belted us by 64 points in the NT. And then, of course, earlier this season where they got us by 56 points. There's been a couple big wins by the Suns along the way, but not many overall. And certainly the Cats well and truly hold sway with the ledger here for, again, fairly obvious reasons, but let's see how that develops over the decades to come. It makes for mostly good reading, but there's some highlights in there, of course. The Cats by 9 points back in 2015, where Jack Martin had formerly, obviously we think of him as a Blue, but we also should be acknowledging him as a... Oh, thanks Red Roger, for sending a gift of a membership. Atush got the membership. Nicely done. Thank you, Red Roger. Good stuff. Enjoy all the extra content, only Carlton. All right. Of course, we're handing it to Carlton members. We can woo them over. We can bring them over. See the light, even despite the loss to them recently. But yeah, Jack Martin had 21 and 3 in that game back in 2015. In round 15 of the same season, the Cats by 14 points. Gold Coast led by 17 points in the second quarter, though, so it became a 31-point turnaround leading to that win. And all the way back in round 11, 2011, where Stevie J put on a show. This was the tickets to the Stevie J show, the ones that he offered Campbell Brown. 31 disposals and 6 goals in a 150-point win. What? Ben, hang on. Let me check these numbers. Where is he getting his data from? Round 11, We didn't play them in round 11, 2011. Ben Reeve, you deadbeat. You screwed up the notes again. There's been some controversies. Let's full screen this one because Ben's giving us dodgy stuff to work with. Some famous crossovers over the years, which says a lot because, of course, the history is pretty brief here. But Gary Ablett Jr. going to the Suns, coming back. Nathan Ablett going to the Suns. Jack Bose coming to the Cats. Josh Caddy coming to the Cats. George Hall-Smith and Zach... sorry, I missed one there. Zach Smith going from the Suns to the Cats. George Hall and Smith departing the Cats to the Suns. Jordan Murdoch departing the Cats to the Suns. And even on the coaching and behind-the-scenes side, we've got Blighty, former Cat coach, of course, became a board member over at the Suns. Sean Grigg as an assistant coach. Ken Hinkley, Stephen King, now head coach of Melbourne. And Maxi Rook, the development coach. Ben says, where's my free membership? You don't get shit. You can't even get your show notes right. Even despite that, Ben couldn't get all his notes right. He's still got this 150-point win in there. Hang on. No, he's just got his rounds wrong. It was round 20. That's it. He got the round wrong from earlier on. That was the issue. Round 20. 2011 was the 150-point win. He just got his weeks wrong. That's what it was. So you got the year right, you got the round wrong. I'm going to fix that up on my side so I don't forget it anymore. But this is why we don't give Ben Reeve free memberships. So the big win, 150 points back in 2011. Of course, the Suns' debut season, that was an absolute poleaxing on the 6th of August in 2011. Our biggest loss, 64 points back in 2024. We touched on earlier. The longest winning streak the Cats have held isn't huge. 2018 to 2022, we won 6 consecutive games. Our longest losing streak between 2023 and 2024 is 2. So across one game across each of those seasons. The goals record held by Stevie J with 7 back in 2011. And the disposals record, Maximus Decimus Meridius back in 2025. You're such a deadbeat. But also, let's check those numbers and where all that came from. That was old Max Holmes, of course, with 40 disposals in a win to the Cats there by 24 points. Oh, Ben's even dropped a last minute trivia question there, so we'll come back to that one in a moment as well. All right, where are we? Let's get into that trivia question initially. So chat, make sure you're at the ready, please. We've got some trivia here to discuss. The one and only question that Ben has provided us tonight, it's about one of our favourites here at the Hoops Crew. How many goals has Jed Buse kicked against the Gold Coast Suns? Fair to say it's a fairly small number, but how many goals has Jed Buse kicked against the Gold Coast Suns? Fire away in the chat. Foxy says 2. You're wrong, Foxy, sorry. Assuming Ben's got my answers for this right as well. Shadu says 6. That's real ambitious. Foxy says 3. You're going the wrong way, Foxy. Which now shows my hand. He's only kicked the 1 goal. All right, let's move on to our next 5 games, assuming I've got the right screen here. I do. Let's bounce back across here and look at that fixture. Of course, the bye, the much needed bye, is now just 2 weeks away. We've got to get through this game against the Suns, and then a big match against the ladder leaders Fremantle. A second match up against them the following weekend over in Perth at Optus Stadium. North Melbourne's home ground for this week. Go figure. We'll be playing them first versus fourth as things currently stand before we finally get the bye. So Suns, Dockers, a bye, we won't count it, followed by Lions, Giants and Saints. There's not necessarily any easy games there because say what you want about the Saints and where they're at in their ladder position, but they always seem to play pretty well against us. You know, when we talk about the Giants, thankfully we're not playing at home, so we may just go out and win this game, but we've got a bit of a knack of losing to them too. The Lions, of course, reigning premiers and starting to potentially find a bit of touch after they touched up the Suns last week, and then these two. So this is still a tough block of 5 games. It doesn't really let up either. Melbourne after that, The Pies might be a softer kill. The injuries are starting to come in, and the season looks like the wheels are starting to maybe fall off a little bit there. The Bombers, North, and Richmond to finish up the year. It's kind of wild how close we are to the end of the season already. All right, let's get into some news. We're going to talk about the AFL Hall of Fame, where Gary Ablett Jr. earned an automatic Hall of Fame selection this week. I don't know why the Cats are using this photo from his final, like the grand final, his final game where he's going off with his shoulder. I'm sure there would have been far more flattering photos for them to work with. There we go. How are you feeling having the Lawson Humphreys picture next to your face, only Carlton? That must just turn the knife a little bit. Welcome to the Cats family. We can bring you across. It's not too late to join the family. Shadu also says, God, I hope Stewie is back for the Freo match. Yeah, I think that's going to be really important. But Gary Ablett Jr. obviously inducted into the AFL Hall of Fame recently, but even within the Geelong Hall of Fame, and we've got the big night to come, but Gary's going to be inducted there alongside Bomber. Who else was getting inducted? Joel Selwood was being inducted. I'm trying to remember. We had the news recently about Hall of Fame and Geelong's Hall of Fame inductees. I suspect they're not gonna link straight to it, but obviously Gaz has done phenomenal things over the years. Are they going to bring up like an achievement summary? This is such a long article. There it is. That's what I was looking for. 357 games, obviously a portion of those with the Suns, but the majority with the Cats. 247 with the Cats, 110 with the Suns, 445 goals in that time. We can see those stints with the Cats between 2002 and 2010, and then 2018 to 2020. Meanwhile, 2011 through 17 with the Suns. He won the Brownlow in 2009 and 2013, premierships in 07 and 09, best and fairest 07, 9, 11, 12, 13, 17, and was an All-Australian in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 8 consecutive years of All-Australian status, and probably deserved it one more time, which would have made him the most capped All-Australian of all time. Instead, that'll probably be Max Gawn by the end of the season, because he just continues to find a way. MVP, 2007, 8, 9, 12, and 13. The AFL Coaches Award Best Player in 2007, 8, and 9. And was the Gold Coast captain through 2011 to 16. They've even taken the opportunity to highlight some of his fellow All-Australians in that time. A lot of them. Lots of success at the Cats. Jimmy Bartell, Paul Chapman, Joel Corey, Danger, Matty Egan, Corey Enright, Cam Guthrie, Tom Harley, Tom Hawkins, Steve Johnson, James Kelly, Tim Kelly, Cameron Ling, Andrew Mackey, Darren Milburn, Cam Mooney, Matty Scarlett, Joel Selwood, Tom Stewart, and Harry Taylor. Plenty of legends there on that list, and obviously highlights for Gary being the premiership and more. Congratulations to Gary Ablett Jr. And to all who'd also been inducted on that particular night. Let's get into some gather round talk now as we continue on through the news, where we can focus on 3 more years of gather round in South Australia. There's some sort of marquee or something that's got to go on that I've read a little bit about. But it's fantastic to see that Gather Round's going to return there. I'm still really eager to make a trip over. I think maybe next year I need to really coordinate it. Maybe coordinate it with a few of you and in the community, and we descend on South Australia. Not Thomas, though. He'll cause us to lose. But Gather Round will remain in South Australia for at least 3 more years after the League and South Australian Government struck a new deal to keep the marquee event in the state. It has been overwhelmingly successful, as the article talks about there. This year, smashed records, 270,000, just a tick over 270,000 people attending. And yeah, lots to kind of focus on there. The growth at Norwood and lots of the other more, I guess, the less central parts of South Australia that have still been attracting huge numbers for the game. It's been a fantastic accomplishment, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about Gather Round as we lead up to that game, as we start to learn a bit about the fixture, what teams are going to be played, and how they make that work. Of course, Tasmania will be a factor in the mix in the not too distant future as well. And there's Andrew Dillon and Peter Malinauskas having a great time talking about it. All right, let's get into some milestones before we get into Game of the Show, before we get into questions, comments, questions and answers. I don't think anyone has dropped any super chats with any specific questions in mind. So if you've got questions for late in the show, $2.99, that's the base super chat number. You can donate less, of course. $2.99 or higher super chats have their topics read and discussed later in the show. So we're getting pretty close to that point. If you've got a specific topic in mind, I've been away for a couple of weeks. If you've got something that's kind of been eating away and you want me to answer it, discuss it with you, use that super chat function and we'll talk all about it. Even if it's a whole conversation about the Knicks and the Spurs, we'll do that too. All right. So the milestones this week, Harris Andrews will be playing his 250th game. 150s to John Noble, so obviously playing against us this weekend, Mason Redman and Nick Holman. And Oscar McDonald will be playing his 100th game this week. And before we jump into questions and answers, before we jump into game of the show, let's quickly go around the grounds and get a status update on the Dogs and the Crows. The Crows got the jump on them, and the Dogs have only barely clawed it back. What were they? They were down by just short of 7 goals at quarter time. They're now down by what are they down by? So they're down by 41 before. They're now down by 40. So congratulations, Western Bulldogs. You managed to cut the margin by a solitary point. You got a lot of work to do. What an absolute joke of a performance this is. I haven't watched anything of it, but what a joke. Who's doing the damage? Oh. Tilthorpe with 3, so big return from Jordan Dawson with 3 already. That's taking the piss. Rochelle 2, Pedler 2, Ben Keys and Darcy Fogarty with 1. The Dogs, basically no one contributing. Artie Jones with 2. Ed Richards, Cooper Hines, and Joel Frazier with 1. Disposals. Wow. Oh, this just must be a case. The Dogs just can't get their hands on it. Look at that. That's ugly stuff. The efficiency from the Crows, that's wild. 80.2%. That's insane stuff. Wow, the Dogs are even winning at the clearance. They're just doing nothing with it. There's the turnovers. Okay. What an interesting game of football. Well, not interesting at all because it's a 40-point margin very early on. It's going to be an absolute hiding. Unless the Dogs can pull out something akin to the New York Knicks today, they're going to have their pants well and truly pulled down. We'll keep that there as we continue to move through the remainder of the show, so we can kind of bounce back to it if we need to. I don't mind seeing a Geelong player next to my name, Paul, because we beat you all the time. Yeah. I'm actually surprised. And so to your point there about the dead Thursday night game, I'm really shocked that we've got a game at Marvel on a Thursday night. And it's been a pattern since Thursday night has become a more regular thing, is that we would have an interstate team, but it'd often be played at the interstate team's home ground. Because you're more likely to kind of fill the place up with a whole stack of Adelaide supporters. Someone who's watching, let me know, how's the crowd there at Marvel Stadium? Was it full before all the Dog supporters went home? Were there lots of people there? Because I don't quite understand that logic. You know, you have the games, the interstate clubs, or even Geelong having their own home game. Those options kind of have worked and worked well in the past. I've not necessarily seen the greatest level of success though from the Melbourne games, because games of footy in Melbourne are a dime a dozen. Regardless of who you support, there's plenty of options to go to. I will be going to St Kilda and GWS this weekend because my son is going to be playing. He's going to be an Auskicker out on the ground at halftime on Sunday. So looking forward to that one. Not so much looking forward to the game, but looking forward to my son getting out there. It's one of those awesome parental moments. Very excited for it. He's very excited too. So we'll see how he goes. I don't think he's going to be one of the ones that who's going to be donning either the Saints or the Giants thing. He would probably love to wear the Giants one because his local team is the Giants. So I think he'd love to probably wear that, but I don't think... Thanks, mate. How do I have a son? Don't look a day over 21, mate. It's good genes. So yeah, no, my son's going to be out there. He's going to have a great time. Who knows? You might see him on TV at halftime during the game. They do like to show the Auskickers doing their thing. Maybe you'll get a gig. with a nice little soccer goal out of the air. He's going to go all. Who did that? Who kicked that soccer goal out of the air? It wasn't Sampy. Who was it that kicked the soccer goal out of the air? Like picked it up and just boom, kicked it straight over the head. I feel like it was someone in WA. Can't for the life of me think of who it was. They plucked it out of the ruck and just kicked. Oh no, hang on, it was Daniel Wells. It was in the West, but it was Daniel Wells. You're going to the game tomorrow night? I had all... now, on this show, only, 2 weeks ago, I was talking about my plan to go to the whiteout game. Not to be. My old man, who has some reserve seats and I was going to jump in with, didn't consult with me, has taken my mum over, who doesn't care about football. By the way, she's a Carlton supporter. Is bringing my mum along to it. They're planning on staying in the city after, like in Geelong afterwards. Great, good on them. Have a great time, mate. I was asking you to grab the seats to go to whiteout, and you didn't do it. Fucking anyway. All right. So I will be here, nice and prompt, for post game live tomorrow night because I'm no longer going to the whiteout game like I'd hoped. Good stuff. All right, let's get into our game of the show because it's been a huge week in video games. This past week, there's an old event that was called E3. It was basically this big central hub where all new games, release dates, all sorts of things would get announced. And I would argue, no, I wouldn't even argue, the best reviewed video game of all time had a remake announced for it this week. After 2.5 decades, this game is coming back. I'm deliberately not saying the game because I just want the trailer to speak for itself. If you've not seen it, you might have a bit of nostalgia tied to this particular title because I think a lot of us, if we're in that 30s, 40s sort of age bracket, like many people in this community kind of are, then you might have had a Nintendo 64 as a kid. And if you owned a Nintendo 64, you very likely played this game. Arguably the greatest game of all time. So let's check out what that remake was.
Long ago, there was a land called Hyrule, created by beings of supreme divinity. At the very edge of this kingdom, there lay a small forest. Within it, an ancient solitary tree quietly watched over the inhabitants of the forest. These forest dwellers were called the Kokiri. Each had a fairy companion, and they lived out their innocent lives in these woods. However, there was one particular boy who did not have a fairy.
There was no voice acting back in this game back in the day. If you can work out already what it is. Look at that. What a glow up. Just in time for a movie next year as well. Boom, 2026. And take it to the bank, because Nintendo doesn't give a fuck. They are going to go head-to-head with GTA 6 at the end of the year. I'm certain of it, and I cannot wait to see how that plays out. Of course, GTA is going to sell more, but I just want someone to come along and just swat GTA 6 down. Ocarina of Time comes out later this year, a remake to what could arguably be the greatest game of all time. It's just going fuck amazing. I'm 20 and I can't wait. You play the shit out of Majora's Mask, mate. Majora's Mask is amazing. What I should do, actually, I'm gonna stick with this because you've mentioned Majora's Mask and you've really struck a topic here. So I'm gonna save you the hassle, though I recommend giving him a view later. There's a team that made a game a couple of years ago called... the team is called Ember Lab. The game they made is called Kena Bridge of Spirits. Ember Lab Zelda. They made a fan film. This is going to go for 4.5 minutes. Chat, should I play this Majora's Mask fan film? It is... I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is absolutely incredible. Foxy, this Ocarina of Time remake, this is the place to start. If you want to really understand what Zelda is, of course there's the more classic 2D ones, but the model is absolutely unreal. So Foxy's saying yes for the fan film. It goes for 4 minutes. But the vibe on it is absolutely crazy. And this team made one of my favorite games of the decade back in 2021 and have their new game coming out likely this year. So if anyone else is keen on the Majora's, we've got Foxy's blessing. I'll see if I can get one or two more people saying yes before I actually do it. I cannot sing the praises of this particular fan film enough. And, it's a fucking fan film. Like, who really cares for the most part? But it's absolutely phenomenal. So I highly recommend. Yeah, okay, there's two. That's enough. Atush, you're going to love this, mate. If you're a Majora's Mask fan, you are absolutely going to love this.
Here, at the end of things, I can still feel its power.
I love any opportunity to promote this video. It's so good.
When I found it, I could sense the doom of a dark omen brewing. And now, that imp has it.
This is all CG, by the way.
I should have heeded the ancient's warning. Nothing can withstand its power.
And so that is Terrible Fate, Majora's Mask Terrible Fate, the fan film based on The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and that is crazy good. Paul, Civil Student 83 popping in. No, I'd agree. Majora's Mask, Ocarina is better. Foxy, absolutely, mate. Yeah, if you want to understand, obviously you're gonna have to have a Nintendo Switch 2. So I don't know if you have a Nintendo Switch 2. But if you've got one and you want to understand what Zelda is, and I don't mean this Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom bullshit that's come in recent years. I know they're meant to be great games for what they are. But if you want to get in on what these games are all about, like the real core of what Zelda is, Ocarina of Time is that game. And fortunate enough, we're getting a remake sometime before the end of the year. So that's the best place to start for anyone who's not checked out a Zelda game or just hasn't played Ocarina. This is the must play. GTA 5, for example, is cited as the most popular game and one of the best reviewed games of all time, the most loved games of all time. It sits on Metacritic, which is like the aggregate site that compiles all video game reviews, official, legitimate, where my reviews go. Funnily enough, from the big outlets, it kind of accumulates all those scores. And GTA 5, I'm going to double check it. Grand Theft Auto 5 is sitting on, I think it's on a 90. It's sitting on a 97 on Metacritic. 97 out of 100. Now that is almost impossible to reach, full stop. Ocarina of Time is sitting on 99. It's the Don Bradman of the video game world. Nothing gets close to it. Nothing has been. I mean, Grand Theft Auto 4 apparently got a 98, but in retrospect, I think most people go, "Oh, that was maybe a little bit too high." Ocarina is it's that good. Now, obviously, how the remake nets out is a whole other story, and of course, presumably this remake's not going to have the big open world sort of depth. It depends on how much they want to commit to the remake and remaking it exactly as it was, but just modern looking, or whether they actually want to add things to it. That'll be a really interesting decision that they've got to make. But I love that art style of the Ocarina of Time remake. It actually gives off some vibes of what Ember Lab did with the Terrible Fate fan film there. That style is fantastic. So I'm all about it. I could talk video games for ages. I'm gonna plug all my own work here for a second. In the last week, there was the big Summer Games Fest kind of showcases. So Nintendo, Microsoft, Microsoft, PlayStation, they all had their showcases, as well as the big Summer Games Fest show. Here at Player 2, you can go and get every single possible trailer you might want. So just within our website here, you can click on features, and you'll see links to all these versus pieces. So the Nintendo Direct, the Summer Games Fest showcase, the Xbox Games Showcase, and the PlayStation State of Play. And within all of those, if I just pick out the Summer Games Fest, for example, there's there's editorial stuff from myself and one of the fellow editors on the team. We spoke about each and every game and shared our thoughts. But also there's a trailer to every single game that was revealed. So you've got lots to pick through. And you can see some of the different games there. And if I was to shout out one more for people to watch, then it would have to be Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3, coming out next year. That was my absolute obvious game of the show for this week until Ocarina of Time the announcement got made. So that's that one. GTA 5 has so many flaws, I don't know how it got that score. I mean, the reality was, and the weird thing about it, and I wonder if it's going to happen again this time, the reviews for GTA 5 back in 2013, so it was before I'd even started doing official published, like Player 2 doesn't have a review for GTA 5 up on its website. We weren't accredited at that point in time. But you may or may not recall, like GTA 5, when it got released, the single player, like the campaign got released, and then the multiplayer didn't come out for, I think it was 2, maybe even 3 weeks afterwards. So the reviews all went up based on the single player and the single player alone. And it got this 97 out of 100 based on the single player and people's love of the single player. And people are very quick to drop a 10 on things, unfortunately. It rained 10 out of 10s. There would have been some 9 out of 10s, but more 10s, and so it skewed it towards the closer to 10, end up on a 97 out of 100 average. And then the multiplayer came out. And of course, the multiplayer it has far more problems. It's broken. There's cheaters everywhere. But it was after the reviews were published, so it was it wasn't going to pull those things down. I reckon there's going to be a similar sort of story this time around too. At least in terms of the sequence of releases, 6 and then the multiplayer to come a little bit after. So, but yeah, if you're keen to kind of see all the different games that were shown, check out some trailers, work out what that next big game is for you on your PlayStation, your Xbox, your Nintendo Switch 2, your PC, whatever it happens to be, then visit the Player 2 website. There's lots of stuff there. I've got a preview actually going live tonight at 11 p.m. For an upcoming Switch 2 game. I got invited over to Nintendo the other week, where I reviewed Star Fox, the upcoming Star Fox, which was also a remake of the Nintendo 64 game. There's that one there. Some of my handiwork. That game's out in just under 2 weeks. But I checked something else out while I was there, and that preview goes live at 11 p.m. tonight. So that's worth checking out as well. Simon asks, so what's the best console, Switch 2 or PS5? It depends on what you're in, like what you're wanting. If you're looking for something that's really good for the whole family, it's going to be good for all ages, then the Switch 2 is your way to go, because these days Nintendo is receiving ports of even PS5 games. Not many, because there's a big difference in power between the two consoles. The Nintendo Switch 2 is considerably weaker as a piece of technology compared to the PS5, and so there's some games that you're just biting off too much, or you're having to make some serious compromises to get the game working on the Switch 2. But there are plenty of examples of games that are coming out, like the Resident Evil games, Resident Evil Requiem, which was the 9th core game that came out early in the year. It was announced that the new Resident Evil, you might have seen me scroll past Resident Evil Veronica, so the old Code Veronica back on the Dreamcast, is getting a remake sometime next year. And that's coming to the Switch 2. Capcom is doing a great job of supporting that platform. Some other developers and publishers are doing a pretty solid job as well. That Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 is coming to Switch 2 day and date. But it'll be much weaker. They're going to be much weaker, lesser versions of the game on the Switch 2. So you're kind of going, am I okay with these compromised versions of these games so that I can get Star Fox, so that I can get Zelda, so that I can get Mario, so that I can get the big Nintendo hitters? And that's kind of the internal debate you've got to have. I love my PS5. My PS5 gets more work than any other console. My Xbox the other day, I went to go fire it up for the first time ever. Not ever, sorry. First time in quite some time. And this thing is basically just a doorstop now. The power supply has died. There must have been a power outage at some point and it's fried it. So I need to take that to go get fixed. It was really unfortunate timing. I'll shout out something else that's on the Player 2 website. We have a preview here for Halo Campaign Evolved. Microsoft gave me access to go check out the preview this week, and I went and fired up my Xbox, and the Xbox was dead. So I had to get back to him and go, hey guys, any chance someone else can do it? Because I sure as shit can't. So yeah. And that Halo is coming to PlayStation, which is crazy. It won't be for long. Gears of War was supposed to be coming later this year. That's not anymore. There's been a lot of drama around some decisions Xbox has made this last week. Whew, I've ranted and raved a lot about that one. I would need a substantial super chat to go near that conversation again, because I've said a lot. about Xbox in the last few weeks. A lot of angry ranting and raving. I'd need a hefty one to consider it. And I'm not asking anyone to do that. Because you've got other places where you can see me ranting about it. So yeah, there's plenty there. So please, like, if you're interested in kind of seeing what's new, what's coming up, you've got a dedicated one on the Nintendo Direct, so you can see, like, if you're trying to make that decision, do I want PlayStation? Do I want? Oh, in fact, hint, hint, nudge, nudge for what's coming up. So we'll see what, perhaps I'll have some more to say in the near future. Maybe at 11 p.m. tonight, that kind of future. More Capcom support, Stellar Blade, if you like your anime boobs. No, game's pretty good, but certainly some people focused far too much on a very booby lady. I don't know why that one's not working. We'll come back to that. Plenty of cool stuff. Fire Emblem's coming. Like, there's lots of great stuff coming to the Switch too, and you are getting this nice mix of the more adult games, and I don't mean adult in terms of the nature of but violence, things that you might want to, a bit of language, protect the kids from a little bit. But then you also get your Zeldas, you get your Nintendo Sports Resorts, so like the old Wii Sports. You'll get your Marios, you get plenty of more. Hello Kitty has a game coming to the Switch too. There's plenty of good family-friendly stuff to go with the more mature stuff. PlayStation is very much in favor of the. Like if you're thinking about buying for kids, if your kids are under the age of 12, then I'd say the Switch 2 is the way to go. If they're north of the age of 12, then maybe the PS5 is the right choice to make. And if you're buying for yourself, get both. Buy a PS5 and then go to Telstra and get one of those Telstra plans. Like, you can get it on a payment plan, pay it off over 48 months and pay like $20 a month. It's great. 24 months. Over 24 months, not 48 months, sorry. So that's an option as well. And yeah, Simon Bear Flight, Microsoft Flight Sim is available on PS5. Microsoft is putting a lot of stuff on PlayStation, but they're now starting to walk it back, which is really unfortunate. And that was kind of the source of my rant on my other show. One of my other live shows, Patched, the other day. So Ben actually, I think, put up a post on the Hoops Crew thing, linking people to the Player 2 YouTube channel. There's a video that I put up yesterday, an hour-long podcast, where I spent about 10-15 minutes losing my mind over what Xbox had done, and I was very, very angry with them. All the while going, hey guys, any chance you can send me a new Xbox for the one that died? They were not able to. Maybe they saw my rant. All right, hang on. Let's go back and check the game. What's going on here? Oh, the Crows are playing with their food. They could probably belt this mob at this point, and they're just leaving it at that. All right. Well, before we wind things down, because there's not been any Q&A prompts pop up, like Super Chats popping up with Q&A topics, so we might start to wind things down, and we'll outro the show here. So remember, tomorrow, of course, it's game day. You'll get post-game live tomorrow night. I will also be recording my preview of the game immediately after finishing this stream, so you get some fuller, more comprehensive thoughts on our match against the Gold Coast Suns. That'll go up tomorrow morning. On Saturday, you'll get the match reaction video. On Monday, the chaps. Tuesday, enough of the week. Wednesday, show us your tips. And then Thursday, the Paul James show ahead of our game against Fremantle. And then a week off. We then have a week off. So, as we start to wind things down, thank you all for having checked out the show tonight. Drop a like on the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the Hoops Crew on YouTube. Share this video with your friends and family. There's lots of stuff from myself, Ben, and the chaps. So please go and check it all out. Good stuff, guys. Up the cats, except Catman. He scares me. Yeah. You were there the other week when we had Catman on the show. What a wild time that was. Doggies with the second goal, back to 34 points. Surely not. Surely they're not going to New York Knicks their way through this one. So go check out the stuff for myself, Ben, and the chaps. There's lots of great stuff. I hope you enjoy it. Go check out the Patreon, patreon.com/thehoopscrew. Early access, extended and exclusive content. Costs you only a single cup of coffee per month to get access to all of it. So please consider checking it all out. You'll find me on socials, Paul James Games on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram. The Hoops Crew, you'll find at the Hoops Crew. Until next time, remain Geelong strong, everyone. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you later. Go Cats. Cats by 8 points.